there was still a piece of me that I wanted to share certain stories that were important to me that I wanted to talk about. And I think it kind of makes sense with everything that I've gone through in my life. And I wanted to, because I remember how alone I felt when I got divorced.
Jana, I just finished your book, The Next Chapter, or Next Chapter, I should say, where you chronicle a full year of your life, right?
Mm-hmm.
Post-divorce. What made you want to write about something that, is so personal?
Well, I mean, I've definitely been an open book for quite some time. And it was one of those things where, I never truly wanted to be this open. It kind of, when everything happened with my ex and our past, it's like I didn't want our story to always be something that would come up in the headlines without us being able to change the narrative. So that's why I really was like, let's make this a positive spin about us trying to fight for our marriage. And, when that obviously crashed and burned, I think for me, it was one of those things where there was still a piece of me that I wanted to share certain stories that were important to me that I wanted to talk about. And I think it kind of makes sense with everything that I've gone through in my life. And I wanted to, because I remember how alone I felt when I got divorced. And I would have loved to have read a book like this, just knowing that someone else felt this exact same way. Because when you're going through it, you're like, I just kept saying over and over, like, I'm never, I'm not good enough. It's my fault. I'm never going to be loved again. It's over for me. And that's just not the truth. And that's not the truth at any age. I had a friend going through a divorce, was in her mid-50s at the same time. And she's like, at least you're younger. Like, she's like, it's done for me. And I'm like, no, it's not. Like,
right.
And now she's engaged and so happy. And so I'm just like, it's never the end. And I think, but when something like that happens, it's nice to know that it's not.
Well, and I always think you're best positioned to serve the person that you once were.
Yeah.
Which is what you're doing. I mean, it's cool to hear you say, I wish I had that. And so now, what's your hope that it inspires readers and the people that follow you, and pick up this book? What do you hope it does for them?
Honestly, I hope it makes them look inside themselves and make them do some really hard work, because I think it's really easy. And I was stuck there. I was stuck in the kind of like victim mentality and blaming my ex and blaming, ex-boyfriends or this, that, or childhood stuff. And I'm like, all right, I can do this. I can do that for the rest of my life, where I can take control and go, okay, what's my part in this? How can I change? How can I learn the lessons? How can I grow? Instead of staying in a hamster wheel of picking the same cast, different face. And still being the same person, like, because there were good qualities and are good qualities of myself, but there are also broken pieces that were playing to that narrative, the old narrative, and the narrative that has been there for many years. And so I think, being able to look inside myself and do some really tough work it was hard, and it took, it was painful, but it was the most transformative work that I've ever done. And so I hope people can look at it and go, okay, yeah, she's, on the other side of things, but it's a constant evolution of like learning and growing and healing and looking inside yourself going, all right, what's the lesson in this?
Sure. What would you say is the greatest lesson in this?
Oh man. I mean, one of the big things for me is I am the worst person to myself. Like, I talk the worst things over and over to myself. And if I was to only treat myself the way that I love other people and love my friends, I would have maybe fought for more for myself and more for my worth, as opposed to just not thinking I deserve that. So I think there's a piece where it's like, if you truly just, speak the words that you would speak to your kids or your friend, that's the piece that always drives me. Because whenever I go to that self-talk or I believe old shame messages and stuff, I just go, what would I want my daughter to say to herself right now?
So much of it's story, isn't it? Right? Like the story that we choose to tell ourselves. Yeah. And it sounds like you had a running clip of a story that was How do you think what was the process in shifting that mindset? And then, because so many people have stories, right? And like you're saying, we want to talk to ourselves like a great coach would
Hmm.
talk to us, right?
Yeah.
Like we talk to our daughters
Yeah.
and our children. How do you do that in real time?
So I think it's first identifying where it came from. So for me, I had to look at, all right, where, at what age was the earliest message that I received, I'm not good enough, or
Mm-hmm.
that I'm not safe, or that I deserve abuse, or that, it's my fault. And so pinpointing it back to that moment where it first happened. And then all the other moments along the way. Okay, in this instance, when this happened, I felt X, Y, and Z. And then really, truly, again, doing some tough work and releasing that and speaking the truth into it. And that's something I
Mm-hmm.
said to my daughter today, too. My son was like, just being silly. And I go, Jolie, what is the truth? Like, the truth. Like, you don't
Mm-hmm.
have to defend, why, why he's not a superhero. Like,
Right.
he's like not technically a superhero. So it's like, like, no, like, the truth. But the problem is we've been so programmed to believe what other people
Yeah.
think in their thoughts of us over our own that
Sure.
it's so muddled. And I'm like, because when I did get divorced, I was like, well, maybe I am the common denominator and it is my fault and I am the problem and I do ask for too much and I am this person that they say that I am. And
Mm-hmm.
though there might be pieces to that, it's not who I am. And so
Sure.
I just identifying that and really letting those things go. But I mean, I had to do for me, what worked was doing the therapeutic, throwing the rocks and
Uh-huh.
writing it into the stream. But and there's still times when I get, a little trigger moment, but then I'm like, all right, I always go back to what is the truth and
Mm-hmm.
what's the message that's not real.
And so as you started to shift the story and as you continue to shift the story, where does the confidence come from in these moments so that you can show up strong?
Sure. I think for me, it took me writing like on sticky notes. Like I had a sticky note outside right when I was to go outside my master door. It said, "You can do this." And every day
Love it.
I'm like,
Love it.
I just seeing it like, "You can do this." And I'm like, for maybe 50 to 100 days, I didn't believe that sticky note. And then finally I was
Mm.
like, oh, I can do this. Like, I feel good. And so it's
Mm-hmm.
almost like saying the thing over and over again. And I was always the person that I was like, oh, that's just so cheesy and it doesn't work. But I'm like, one day you just kind of believe it. You're
Yeah.
like, I do got this. Like, this didn't kill me. I'm okay. And I'm
Mm-hmm.
going to get through this. And
Mm-hmm.
so whether you believe it or not, and I've struggled with anxiety for years. And so sometimes it's like, again, it's being that friend to yourself and just like being your own like cheerleader and pep talking. And again, that sounds like so cheesy because when I heard that when I was in that state, I'm like, that doesn't work. But over time, it works.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think confidence comes through action, doesn't it? Right? Like it comes over, to your point, it comes over time. So the sticky note, I love it, right? What were some of the other things that you did that helped
Yeah.
keep you in front of the right story, the positive story, the you can do this Jana story?
I mean, the people who I surrounded myself with was really important.
Mm-hmm.
So, having a therapist that was, that would call me out on my stuff, but also be my biggest encourager. But and also my girlfriends, they wouldn't, they really, when I would start to kind of retell a story, it's like they would always go positive and not sit with me. I mean, yes, they would like sit with me in like my pain, but at
Mm-hmm.
a certain point, they're like, all right,
Yeah,
you gotta
let's
get
go.
out of this. You know what I mean? Like
Yeah.
you can't change it. It's not changing. It's done. You know what I mean? And I'm like, okay, yeah. So, but it's like you need those people that like lift you up and that encourage you to like take the steps forward.
Mm-hmm.
So I think, I mean, having that community is really important. And then, for me, it was finding the faith element as well, which, I've
Mm-hmm.
always kind of struggled with. But yeah, I mean, those were the three main things for sure.
Well, and obviously, you talk about keeping the right people in your ecosystem that lift you up, and you talk about your ex,
Hmm.
and you obviously made some tough decisions, right, to remove the people in your life and in that ecosystem that aren't serving you, that aren't taking you where you want to go. I can't imagine what a difficult decision that is. How did you know when it was time, Jana? Like, how did you know, like, it is time for me to step out of this?
Yeah, and that's one of the questions that like is the number one thing that people DM me, and for a long time I asked those same questions. I would ask a friend and I go, you know, how do I know like when I've had enough? And they're like, you will just know when like when that moment comes. And for me, obviously I wrote about it in the book when that moment came. And for me personally, I had to do everything in my power to try to save the marriage so that I could tell my kids I fought as hard as I could. I needed that. Like I
Mm-hmm.
needed that closure because I also had, someone, my ex, saying, it'll never happen again. Like, I don't like to live with what ifs or wonder, well, maybe he would have changed if I would have just stayed. Where I got to after those 7 years of fighting for our marriage, I don't care what he could have said to me. I don't care what miracle drug he could have told me he was going to take, or, I mean, anything. He could have
Mm-hmm.
promised me the moon, or, and I just would have been like, I don't want it. Like, you come to a point where you just, the pain of staying is harder
Mm-hmm.
than leaving. And so I got to that point and I was just like, I cannot stay in this any longer because it is physically, mentally, emotionally killing me. And this is not good. And then I'm like, and as a mother, this is not who I want my children to see anymore.
Mm-hmm.
So, and it was a very hard decision to come to, but it was also, I had this like weird wave of peace come over me. Like, this is time and it's not going
Mm-hmm.
to change. And if it was going to change, it would have happened the year before, the year before that, or the year before that. And, at the end of the day, there's that quote. It's like people show you who they are, believe them. And so I had to
Mm-hmm.
finally go, he has shown me for 7 years who he is, with me at least, and
Mm-hmm.
I can't stand for that anymore. But it was tough. And, I was grateful to be in a situation where I could walk away. There's a lot of women that don't, that have ended up staying just being moms, and then they don't feel like they don't have the money to get out. And so I just like that pains me because I'm like, I would hate to feel that trapped feeling of not being able to get out. So I felt fortunate to be able to be in that situation where I could leave my
Mm-hmm.
marriage.
Mm-hmm.
um, but I also don't think I could have. I know I could not have stayed another day, another year. And I felt I made the decision for myself, not a therapist, not my best friend who would have
Mm-hmm.
left the first time or the second or third time. So it was that peace knowing that nobody can tell you when the time to leave is but yourself.
Yeah. Well, and because you've got to live with that. You've got to own that decision. What do you tell people who feel like for whatever reason they can't walk away, be it financial, be it what do you tell women that feel that way?
You know, and it's hard to say this because it's all again, I'm not in that situation. I just think everything comes back to you and you will be like there will be beauty in it, whether, and it's like I would have moved my kids out and just all of us shacked up in a bed. I don't care. Like
Mm-hmm.
that's how bad I had to get out. um and so I think it's one of those things where it might feel like it's one of the hardest things you'll ever have to do. And um you might not know what or how you're going to do it, but the thing is as women too, and as just humans, like we
Sure.
will always figure that we will find a way. You will find a way. And like it's just I just it's so much more beautiful on the other side.
Mm-hmm.
And
Mm-hmm.
like I wish I could write a whole chapter thanking my ex for, for doing the things he did, because I'm like now it's like whether obviously now I'm in a relationship, but even before it's like this is so much better even just being alone. Like
Mm-hmm.
the true happiness that you find with yourself and not having to walk around in that tension. And how what it physically does to you too. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
is
Mm-hmm.
insane.
And at some level, as I'm listening, I'm thinking it takes confidence to step out of that, right? But yet you're in an environment and a circumstance where that is being sucked out of you consistently. It takes energy to step out. It takes perspective. It takes discipline. It takes consistency. Where do you think that came from inside of you in that moment? Beyond just the I'm done, it's time. You had to muster up a lot of other things to
Mhm.
step out to be where you are now.
For me, it was it. it all just goes back to my kids. I mean, they're the main reason that I do
Mm-hmm.
anything, everything.
Yeah.
You know, they've given me more strength than I probably could ever give to myself. But I mean, I couldn't imagine them growing up in something where we were at. It just kept getting more toxic and toxic, and I don't want that for my children.
Mm-hmm.
And in my mind, I kind of set like a frame, a time frame. Like if it's not good at this date, like I have to walk away. And
Mm-hmm.
in my case, I was shown that with more infidelity, but either way, I mean, we had an expiration date, and it was because we both knew that this was not a good household and good energy for my kids. But again, it wasn't easy. I mean, it was awful. It was the worst pain, and I don't wish it upon anyone to
Mm-hmm.
have to sign the papers and see your children on a piece of
Mm-hmm.
white paper signed names of who gets who, and it's like it's awful.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And it's also beautiful on the other side too. Like the
Yeah.
the parents that we've been able to become and how we co-parent now together is it's beautiful, and we're better friends now than we were when we were ever married.
Oh, that's awesome. How did you get back to trusting yourself?
I think again that just takes time, and I talk a lot about in the book about like this is again something that people always talk about, but just giving yourself that grace to make missteps like in the trusting process, because
Mm-hmm.
even post divorce, um, I still like I didn't know I was holding on to all these old messages and patterns of living. So I didn't know how to trust myself. It just took a lot of time again in who I surrounded myself with, and just you know really digging my heels into becoming the best version for myself and for my kids. And while doing that, you start to trust your intuitions. You start to trust what you're doing because of
Mm-hmm.
who you're becoming.
Mm-hmm. Are you happy now?
Oh God, I mean, yes,
Yeah,
of
good.
course. I'm like, it's so strange because I'm so grateful for everything that I went through in that book.
Mm-hmm.
Though it was very hard to relive and write down. But I mean, I have the two most beautiful children in the world. I have an amazing man who loves, my kids and I,
Mm-hmm.
and shows me what real love looks like. And I'm now able to love someone the way that I've always wanted to love someone, because I don't think even when I was married to my ex, well, I know, like, again, I had my own stuff coming to it. So now I'm a completely different version of myself in this
Mm-hmm.
relationship. And
Mm-hmm.
that's a gift. Like, my ex gave me a gift to really, like, work on myself.
Sure, sure. It's cool too how you talk about, I mean, I always think purpose is beyond us, right? What drives us to make changes in our lives, what drives us to keep going when it's hard, what drives us to overcome challenges and adversity is something beyond us. And that's sort of what you alluded to, right? It wasn't really, it sounds like it was not about you in some regards. You stepped out of it because you wanted something better for your kids,
Mhm.
the result of which has unlocked a better version of you, but it was anchored in something beyond you at some level, it sounds like.
Yeah, absolutely.
That's interesting. You talk about anxiety, Jenna, a lot in the book, and which a lot of people struggle with, Jana. You know what I mean? A lot of people struggle with that. What are some of the tools, the strategies, the ways in which you have navigated that to show up in the world in a way that is deeply personal, pretty consistently?
Yeah, I mean, anxiety has just been a struggle for me since I was 19, because of that first PTSD, that first
Yeah.
abuser that I wrote about in the book. And, I know I'm not the only person that deals with it, so I obviously wanted to touch on that a lot in the book. But it's something, too, where I realized, I mean, the day that I essentially filed for divorce and my ex left the house, I didn't have an ounce of anxiety anymore. Like it
Mm,
just went away. And that's just it's incredible can who can just create negative toxic energy for you when they're in your space. And I was constantly playing detective. I was constantly worried. I was gripping so tight onto something that
mm,
I lost control of myself and lost control of my family, the whole like 6 years of our marriage was just, you know, trying to control so that he wouldn't cheat, and it's just like
Mm-hmm.
it's just so so much anxiety, and what that did to my system was just, it's a lot. So I always say too, I'm like, yes, you might have anxiety, but look around, like what is feeding that anxiety, and it might be a person, it might be a situation. And so, my therapist always is like, if you start to feel that anxiety come up, something for me, because I've always, when I get anxiety, it means that I'm not safe. So who or what is making me feel unsafe right now, and what is
Mm.
that? And to really, magnify that piece.
That's the question you ask yourself when you feel anxious, is who or what is creating this feeling?
Mhm.
And then what do you do?
Well, if it's a who, then I remove myself from that person.
Mm-hmm.
If it's a familiar, like one of the dates that I went on, post divorce, uh, I had started to get anxiety, and I'm like, why am I getting anxiety right now? Well, because it was a similar characteristic that my ex would have.
Mm.
And so when I asked myself who's, I was like, well, this is what my ex would do. Like this was
Mm.
a
Mm.
pattern, like of an aggression, and it scared me.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so I was like, I got to cut this off right now, because this feels way too familiar, than that I've been through this before. I'm not doing this again. And then, other things is like, if I'm driving or something, and I don't know, like there's traffic and I feel stuck, that sometimes makes me feel unsafe. So it's like, all right, I'm going to pull off, or,
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to
Mm-hmm.
go for a joyride or
Yeah.
something like that, a different direction. So it's just pinpointing that. And I think that helps me eliminate, for me, again, anxiety comes from not feeling safe. So anything that doesn't make me feel safe. And then, repeating back, like, I'm okay, and here is why I'm okay. I can call my friend Catherine, who lives right down the street, or I can go this way, or, so
Mm-hmm.
it's just like a
Mm-hmm.
rerouting your anxiety to not fear what's going to happen next.
Yeah. Yeah. That's awesome. And you have found love again. I'm so pumped. And you have a little pumpkin in there, which I just,
Yeah.
oh, I love it. I love it. My husband and I have three, I still call them my miracles. They're all in college. I still call them my miracles. But
Aw.
what was the work that you did to be in a healthy relationship like you've described, right? To get to
Yeah.
this place that where you're so happy, which
Yeah. And I'm so glad too, like this book, I didn't touch on.
right, you didn't talk about it a lot.
No, I didn't, because I didn't, once I did my first draft, I still hadn't met Alan. But even so, I just, my editor was like, well, maybe we should wait until, you've moved on and you're in I was like, no, like my entire like who Jana is Jana is happy if she's in a relationship. I was like,
Mm.
Jana needs to be happy when she's not in a
Oh,
relationship.
amen, girl.
Is what this book needs to be about, because I always equated happiness equals relationship, or with someone, or
Mm.
in love. And so this was a true journey of, loving myself and being like, though I always say I think everyone will find their person, I got to the place finally where I was like, and I still believe that, and I would be okay if I didn't, because I have
Mm-hmm.
so much love around me with my friends and my family and my kids, and I love my space now. I love my alone time. I love, and I love my fiance so incredibly much, and I know I'd also be okay. Like
Mm-hmm.
the world is not going to like fall
Right.
apart if something were to happen. I pray it doesn't, but it doesn't define me anymore. Like I love myself enough to know what I deserve, what I don't, and he just adds to my life in a beautiful way.
Mm.
But that took really truly like being alone, and like again doing that work to believe that I deserve to love myself. And I think
Mm-hmm.
that's the hardest piece. Not that I deserve someone to love me. Yes, I do, but I also deserve to love myself.
And spending time alone, not in a relationship, in so many ways is what, because the first was, so you were young,
Hmm.
right? And so now, how did you know this time was different, right? How did you know, Alan, it was different?
Well, I was different first and foremost. Like
Mm,
even if
cool.
I would have met him 7 years ago, like before my ex, it's still I still don't think it would have worked. Like I needed to fix so many of my core issues. Um, and and who he had to go on his own journey too. So with him, I mean, I have never ever been respected so much or loved, but I also equate that to I never demanded respect and love in my last relationship.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So I never felt it. Of course I didn't feel it because I didn't demand it. I didn't know what it was. I didn't ask for it. But with this, it's like I know I deserve and I respect it, but he just it's so beautiful to feel that, and like it's both ways too. Like the way that I respect him and the way that I love him, it's just it's a beautiful, safe place to be together.
What do you tell somebody that's like, man, I don't know about this happily ever after thing, right? You say that, right? That you didn't think it was ever going to happen again. What do you tell somebody that it is possible and you will find that? Be happy with who you are, of course, but there is happily ever after. You're proof.
I mean, I believe in it, and again, I mean, I'm a glutton for punishment, but I truly do believe in it. And I think people that say that don't think that they deserve it is kind of what I go to.
What's changed in how you think about happiness differently now?
Well, it doesn't equate to a man. It doesn't equate to the, picture perfect happy family. Like I thought, that's something that, that's what I thought it was. It had to be a structured, home and or with the mom and dad. And it's like, well, now I see, I mean, how my fiance is with my kids is the most beautiful thing.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think happiness is, everything that, well, first of all, I mean, it's everything, but it's also, again, something you deserve, but also it doesn't have to look the way that we grew up thinking it was supposed to look.
Mm-hmm. It can look the way we want it to look.
Yeah.
In our
We get to, and we get to write our own story. That's the most beautiful thing. Like, yeah, I could sit in bed and cry all day long and blame X, Y, and Z or do this, but it's like, that's not the story I want to write because
Sure.
I don't think that ends up very well. The story I want to write is one of happiness and love.
What role did your childhood play in many of this, Jana, and how is it changing the way you parent?
Oh man, I mean everything. And my parents did a great job with what they had, right?
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah, I can look back and go, I wish my dad was more supportive, or I wish my dad, was a little softer and not so angry. I wish my mom would have, stood up for herself and, left, honestly, my dad way
Mm-hmm.
sooner than she did.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, so, I think I saw things that I shouldn't have seen. And so that's, again, one of the reasons as a parent now, I'm like, oh, my daughter just saw us throwing some stuff. Like, this is not what she should be seeing right now. Or I
Mm-hmm.
don't want her to hear slam doors. I don't want her to hear screaming. Like, I think it's okay for her to hear conflict and us, having some interactions for sure,
Mm-hmm.
but never to the extent that, I grew up having, or even with my ex. So, it changes everything. It also changes, and again, I'm going to make mistakes. I'm sure there'll be a therapy bill in my future with my kids at some point. Like, I'm going to do something wrong, but like, at least I'm trying and like trying to find tools to go, okay, tell me your feelings. And, I want to, I'm talking to everybody and be like, all right, how can I, not do this wrong, but I will do it wrong. There will be days that I'm not going to be perfect. And the other day, like I was stressed with work and wasn't feeling good and lost my temper a little bit. But then it's like repairing that, going back, going, Mommy's really sorry I yelled, but you guys like were not listening. And I lost it,
Mm-hmm.
So
Mm-hmm.
I think it's just seeing that they're human, but that we're human and that, we fall short, but that we love them so much and they're safe.
Mm-hmm. So at some level, was it this was an environment you were in where you thought, well, this is just normal, and so at some level that became the lens by which normal was, and
Yeah.
you've shifted your mindset around what is in fact right and normal.
Yep.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
that's awesome. I love how you talk about chasing joy,
Mm.
and what did that look like for you when how do you chase joy every day? I mean, to me, joy is such an important word for all of us to have throughout our lives. How do you
Right.
do it now? How do you chase joy now? And how did you chase joy when things were a little crazy.
Yeah, I mean, I had literally forced myself to do it then, and you realize how much fun it truly is, and how freeing it is, and the freedom you feel in it, and the joy that you feel in doing that. Nowadays, it's just I think I've kind of changed it to gratefulness. Like I'm just so grateful for it all. And with that is joy. Like within gratefulness is joyfulness. And there's obviously tougher days and schedules, this, that, and the other, whatever happens, but it all always falls back to I'm blessed. I'm grateful that I have my beautiful children. I'm able to do what I do, and um the end of the day, like I'm just really freaking grateful to be alive. I know that's like
Hmm.
super cheesy, but I mean there are so many people that like it could end tomorrow. So I'm like, every day I'm just like I really try to, at least wake up and say like I'm so grateful for today, because it's
Yeah.
like it's just so short. And that's why I don't want negative energy. I don't
Hmm.
want like to carry any of that stuff, because I'm like, what is that even for?
Hmm.
You know?
Sure. 100%. Totally. No, we gotta unload that. How, you talk about career, your children, your pregnant. I mean, how have you juggled and how do you juggle at some level family, career, everything else is coming at you in life? I mean, the things that you've done are remarkable at such a young age still.
Um, yeah, I mean, again, I take it on as a as a Michigan girl.
Yeah.
My mom grew up a single mom, and if I ever wanted anything, I had to work really hard for it.
Yeah.
I was never comfortable with. We didn't have money. My mom worked three jobs. I had to quit ice skating because my mom couldn't afford it. And so, if I wanted a car, I had to buy it. I had to get a job. And so
Hmm.
I've just always had the mentality that I gotta work, and I gotta, provide and support. And at times that can feel a lot, especially, when I'm paying child support and I have my kids 70% of the time, and I'm trying
Hmm.
to juggle all the pieces and supporting everybody. But it's also something that drives me to continue. And I think I need that drive in me.
Hmm.
Because even if, you know, things were easy, I'd be like, I would throw a wrench in it somehow and be like, all right, what can I do? What can I create? How can I do this? So,
Sure.
I'm constantly like I like to stay busy, but again, I'm very present. Like when at the end, when my kids are done with school, I don't do 1 ounce of anything work related. It
That's
is
awesome.
off, like it's my kids.
Yeah.
Obviously with the new baby, I'm gonna have to find a new normal again, and but again, like I look at it as such a blessing. Like I get to, I don't have to.
Yeah. No question. Well, and to me, balance is a byproduct of clarity around what matters most to us and then having the discipline to make the decisions that align with that,
Hmm.
which is hard, right?
Yeah,
Because you have a lot of choices on where you spend your time and energy, a ton.
yeah.
So, how have you learned how to say no, align your decisions with what matters most? You got to
Mhm.
say no a lot.
Yeah, it's I just said something the other day. I'm like, no, I can't stay that long because Jace has a baseball game and I don't want to miss like
Yeah.
this baseball game. I was like, I had to miss the other one last week. I'm not doing that again. So if it's again, if everything's I think things can be molded and changed. So if it's really important to you, and I used to have a hard time saying no because again, on the providing side, I'm like, I have to work, I have to work, I have to work, and you realize that people will change things around, if
Sure.
there is flexibility in it, and you don't always have to say no yes right at this moment. And there is, some flex to it, but I've made sure that movie roles were changed because I was like, well, I'm not missing her first day of school. So, but it got changed, so
Hmm.
it's like
Sure.
just asking for what you need is something that I learned is a powerful tool that people will respect if it's your, you know.
Yeah. You said the word drive, and I have a book coming out next fall on
Yay.
drive, and I'm a huge fan of drive. I think it's dynamic drive is really often how I sort of talk about it. But where do you think that drive for you comes from? I mean, I know we've got this Michigan vibe, and I think there's a lot of that we were raised with in the Midwest. But where else does that come from beyond the things that, my mom and what you saw, I mean, where else does that continue to come from inside of you every day?
I think there's the piece of me that I don't, well, it's two parts. One is, the drive because I want to support my kids, right? And I
Mm-hmm.
want to, give them everything, to an extent. But like I've
Yeah,
learned,
totally.
yeah, yeah, I was like, no, no, like you will work for your car. I'm gonna give
Right.
you a prize at the end of your car payments, but you will pay the car payments. Like I'm
Right.
not giving, like, because I loved that my parents did that.
Absolutely. Me too, girl.
So
Totally.
I'm like, we are not giving them anything. Like they
Yeah.
will work for it. They will have like, so it's like that piece I love. But I also think on the flip side of it is the drive comes from I don't want to fail too. I mean, there's so many messages, those things that come in, and I want to do it, and I don't want to have to, and there's things that I failed on. There's businesses that I failed and it hasn't worked, and that hurt, but you always reroute, right?
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
that's trying to find that balance.
Which is so cool. I mean, at some level, when we think about that drive inside of you inspires so many other people, Jana, no question about it. In the next chapter,
Mhm.
it's really about your personal evolution, right? What are you most proud of when you reflect on your growth?
I would say that, I mean, I hated being alone. And I would say that I love the fact that I got to a place where I am comfortable being in that alone space.
Hmm.
And that I'm proud that I didn't settle the
Yeah.
next go around, and that I really dug in and did the work to really change the path for me and my kids.
Hmm. Which you have, which is unbelievable, and you've got another little miracle on the way. I'm so excited. How far along are you now?
Well, right now I am 20, I'll be 27 weeks on Saturday. So
Okay. Oh,
I
that's
don't know when
awesome.
this airs, but
And you're feeling good?
I mean, almost 40 and a baby is like things just feel a little different. I'm like, don't go down there. It does not look the same it did when I was in my 30s. So, yeah, I mean, but again, it's like I did not, I mean, my ex and I struggled with multiple miscarriages,
Hmm.
in conceiving, and that's another thing too. And I'm like, well, yeah, because I was stressed and
Right.
anxious and like, and this was like our first try. Like, how did this even happen? So
Mm. Yeah,
yeah,
because you weren't stressed. You were.
yeah.
What is how do you manage your energy, Jana? Like when you think about I wrote a book about energy. I'm a huge fan of managing our energy at some level more than our time. What's your approach to
I'm gonna have to read your book because I do a really bad job at it.
that?
But I will say the one thing that I do make time for is like I have to be, and again, this might be my Michigander side of me, but
Hmm.
like I have
Hmm.
to be outside and either work out, go for a walk or a run. Like that has been when I feel sluggish, it's because I didn't go for a run that morning, or it's
Yeah,
because I didn't go for a walk and get outside and like breathe in the fresh air.
sure.
Um, but yeah, I mean, I struggle with it because I feel pulled in so many directions. By the end of the night, I'm just kind of like zoning out and like staring at a blank wall.
Hmm.
So, I don't drink caffeine. I don't like, so it's like,
Wait a minute.
but
Wait a minute. Why don't you drink caffeine? Like that's another.
I know I stopped caffeine when I was like in my 20s because of anxiety. I'm gonna have to start back up when this baby comes out. I think I'm gonna be like, let me give coffee a try again.
Yeah. I think it's when we have kids that we start drinking
Yeah,
coffee, right?
I know. So
It's a
yeah,
game changer, girl.
yeah, but I think it's all like in your mindset too. Like the energy comes from, but I'm a very much like if it is a cloudy, rainy day out, like I have a hard time picking myself up with energy. But again, I think it's all in just your mindset and how you can change that. My fiance is really good at like doing like a 10-minute meditation. And at first I was like, that's not me. I'm not a meditator. I'm not going to do that with you. And now I'm like, hey, babe, you want to go meditate for 10 minutes? Because it's like, it really just kind of like,
Yeah.
it lets your mind shut off and then it like re-energizes you.
Yeah.
It's shocking to me.
Well, and the data around it is enormous. But I mean, I think one of the things when I was a sports agent that I saw great athletes do is they don't often business people generally ask themselves, where am I going to spend my time? And they operate against their calendars. But athletes operate against, how am I going to perform at my best on Sunday for tonight's game and manage their energy so they can show up in the big moments as their best. And then we live in this world with business people just accepting meetings, showing up, and then they get to the meeting that matters the most on Wednesday, for example,
Right.
and they've spent all their energy on the unimportant and don't have the kind of energy they need for sort of the big moment. And so to me, looking at our schedules through the lens of energy and the moments that matter most allows us to show up in those moments, even better, which is what I think at the end of the day we all want in our lives, right? To be the best version of ourselves consistently. So listen, we end with rapid fire.
Yeah, I love rapid fire.
All right, let's do this. So what's one thing on your bucket list?
Oh, I really want to go to Italy. And funny enough, as I've never had a honeymoon, even though I've been married before, a couple times, but never went on a honeymoon. So a honeymoon is on the bucket list.
Let's go. Cool. Good for you. So is that the honeymoon plans? Italy?
I mean, I'm kind of like nudging that to the fiance. Like Italy would be really cool, but I mean, he's from Scotland, so he's
Right.
like probably done it a million times. So I don't know. We'll see.
Sure. Your dream co-star. Like who would you want to share the screen with?
Jason Bateman.
Let's go. What's your biggest fear?
My biggest fear, like
Yeah.
dying. I know it's
Dying.
kind of- yeah.
Yeah. Okay. What brings you the greatest joy? I think I have a sense for that. Yeah, for sure. Amen, girl. I hear you on that. So in the last year, what's a new habit or maybe a purchase that's improved your life?
Ooh, a purchase that's improved my
Or a new
life.
habit or both?
A new habit. Oh, habit. I'll do habit. The meditating.
Mm-hmm.
1000% improved.
What's your morning routine and your evening routine?
Morning routine. I mean, I get straight up, start making, I get the kids their cereals, eggs for my daughter, and then I am making their lunches. I mean, it's just school, 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 get them
Right.
ready out the door.
Yeah.
And then when they are at school, that's when I do like my workout or
Yeah.
my time before I start my day. And then my nighttime routine is one of my favorites. We all go into one of the kids' rooms, tell a story, sing some songs. They go to bed, and then it's just connecting time with me and my man.
I love it. I love it. So the show's called Game Changers. So one last question. Who or what is a game changer and who inspires you and why?
Oh, that's a good one. I would say all the people that have walked the paths before I did have inspired me.
What paths? Which paths?
I mean, the ones that have gotten out of, that have the single moms that have walked before me. I mean, they've all been my teachers in this. They've been the women that have gotten out of abusive relationships. They've been my teachers. And I would say, I would probably say at the end of the day that the main person that is my game changer was my therapist, Amy Alexander.
Awesome. Jana, this was fun. I know you are an incredible human being, but you're a Michigan girl, and that's my favorite part about you, by the way, beyond everything else, which is insane that you've done.
Thank you. I appreciate
You're a
it.
Michigan girl, and I love it.